Yeah, it does because there was fans. First time I was in an empty arena during COVID. Such a different experience. But yeah, I'm very proud of what I just did. Um, Coming off the Max loss, I had a lot of doubters, and people forget. People are their recency bias is crazy. They're fickle, and I love to remind them.
So, in the gym where I grow up, we have close to 30 black belts, and for me, Ryan's game was very familiar. And when they offered me a fight, I said...
Just when it seemed like the conversation around Ilia Topuria couldn't get any louder, a new controversy pushed him back into the spotlight. This time, the attention wasn't coming from a title fight, it was coming from words. And those words quickly spread across the MMA community. At the center of the discussion was Justin Gaethje, one of the most respected and battle-tested fighters in the sport. Known for his direct personality and willingness to speak his mind, Gaethje has never been the type to carefully filter every opinion, which is why fans immediately paid attention when his comments regarding Topuria began generating headlines. Some supporters viewed the remarks as honest criticism, others saw them as unnecessary disrespect, but regardless of perspective, the reaction was impossible to ignore, because whenever a fighter with Gaethje's reputation questions someone like Topuria, the conversation naturally becomes bigger than a simple exchange of words. From an analytical standpoint, that's what makes this story interesting. It's not just about whether the comments were harsh, it's about what they represent, a growing divide in how certain fighters view Topuria's rise. To some, he's one of the most complete fighters in the sport today. To others, the hype surrounding him may have grown faster than the evidence supporting it. That disagreement has created a new narrative, and as discussions about potential future matchups continue, every comment now carries additional weight, especially when it comes from someone like Justin Gaethje, because if one of the UFC's most respected veterans is publicly pushing back against the Topuria narrative, the obvious question becomes, why? And what exactly led him to take that position in the first place? As the discussion continued to grow, attention quickly shifted toward a simple question. What exactly did Justin Gaethje mean? Because in MMA, comments rarely exist in isolation. Every statement gets analyzed, every reaction gets amplified, and every headline creates its own version of the story. From an analytical perspective, that's important. The difference between criticism and personal animosity is often much smaller than fans assume. In Gaethje's case, the focus wasn't simply on a single phrase. It was on the broader message behind it. His comments appeared to challenge the growing perception surrounding Ilia Topuria and the way many fans have begun talking about him. Over the last few years, Topuria has gone from rising contender to one of the most discussed names in the sport. With every major victory, expectations increased, so did the praise, and eventually that level of praise created pushback from some corners of the MMA community. Veteran fighters often evaluate success differently than fans do. They look at strength of schedule, long-term consistency, adaptation over time, not just highlight moments. That context matters when analyzing Gaethje's position, because from his perspective, the issue may not be Topuria's talent itself. It may be the speed at which narratives are being built around him, and that distinction changes the conversation. Instead of asking whether Topuria is elite, the debate becomes whether the sport is moving too quickly to crown him as something even bigger. That's where the controversy starts, because once expectations reach a certain level, every criticism feels stronger, and every disagreement becomes a headline, which is exactly why Gaethje's comments generated so much attention across the MMA world. The reason Ilia Topuria generates such strong reactions isn't because people disagree about his talent. Most don't. From an analytical perspective, the controversy comes from something else entirely: the gap between achievement and perception. Topuria has built a reputation as one of the most confident fighters in the sport. Long before some of his biggest victories, he openly predicted outcomes, called out elite opponents, and spoke as if success was inevitable. For his supporters, that confidence is part of what makes him special. For his critics, it's part of what makes him difficult to embrace. And that's where the divide begins, because in MMA, confidence is often celebrated until it starts sounding like certainty. As Topuria's profile continued growing, so did the expectations surrounding him. Fans began discussing legacy, championship reigns, potential all-time greatness. And when conversations reach that level, resistance naturally follows. Some people see a future superstar, others see a fighter who still has more to prove. That's why every performance, interview, and fan call-out tends to receive so much attention, Topuria isn't just winning fights, he's becoming a symbol of a larger debate within MMA. How quickly should a fighter be elevated? How much should confidence influence perception? And at what point does hype become reality? These questions don't have simple answers, but they help explain why figures like Justin Gaethje aren't always convinced by the public narrative. Veteran fighters have spent years battling elite competition. They tend to evaluate greatness through consistency over time rather than momentum in the moment. And when those perspectives collide with a rapidly rising star like Topuria, controversy becomes almost inevitable. Because at this point, people aren't just debating a fighter, they're debating what his success actually means. As the debate surrounding Justin Gaethje and Ilia Topuria continued to grow, another topic quickly entered the conversation: a potential rematch. On paper, it sounds simple. Two elite fighters, a heated narrative, massive fan interest. But from an analytical perspective, matchmaking at the highest level is rarely that straightforward, because when fighters discuss rematches, they're not just evaluating emotions, they're evaluating risk. For someone like Gaethje, every fight carries enormous consequences at this stage of his career. Rankings, title opportunities, and long-term positioning all become part of the decision-making process. That's why public callouts and actual fight negotiations are often very different conversations. Fans tend to focus on excitement, fighters tend to focus on timing, and timing can change everything. If Gaethje truly has reservations about facing Topuria again, those concerns may extend beyond personal opinions or media headlines. He may simply view the situation through a competitive lens. What does the fight accomplish? What are the risks? And does it make sense within the broader title picture? Those are the kinds of questions veteran fighters often prioritize. At the same time, supporters of Topuria see the situation differently. Many believe that dominant performances and growing popularity have already earned him the biggest possible matchups. From that perspective, reluctance to fight him can be interpreted as avoidance. And that's where narratives begin forming. One side sees strategic decision making, the other sees hesitation. The truth is often somewhere in the middle. But regardless of which interpretation fans choose, the discussion has already created something valuable for the UFC: attention. Because every time a potential Topuria matchup becomes controversial, public interest grows. And in modern MMA, attention often becomes almost as important as the fight itself. As the comments continued circulating through the MMA world, the reactions were exactly what many people expected: division. Supporters of Ilia Topuria viewed the criticism as unfair. Supporters of Justin Gaethje viewed it as honesty. And somewhere in between, the debate grew larger than the original comments themselves. From an analytical perspective, this is what often happens when two high-profile fighters become attached to competing narratives. The discussion stops being about a specific statement. Instead, it becomes a referendum on how fans view each fighter. For Topuria's supporters, his recent accomplishments speak for themselves. They see a fighter who has consistently backed up his confidence inside the cage and proven he belongs among the elite. To them, criticism sounds less like analysis and more like resistance to a changing landscape. But others see things differently. Some fans believe that excitement surrounding Topuria has accelerated so quickly that legitimate questions are being dismissed too easily. And when veteran fighters express those concerns publicly, many people listen. That's especially true when the criticism comes from someone like Gaethje. Throughout his career, he built a reputation for fighting anyone, accepting difficult challenges, and speaking directly even when his opinions proved unpopular. Because of that reputation, his comments carry additional weight. The fighter reaction has been interesting as well. Some athletes have defended Topuria's accomplishments. Others have echoed concerns about hype, expectations, and the speed at which narratives are built in modern MMA. And that's what makes this situation so fascinating. The MMA community isn't arguing about whether Topuria is talented. They're arguing about something much bigger: how great he already is. And that question is creating one of the most polarizing debates in the sport right now. At the center of this entire debate is a simple question: does Justin Gaethje actually have a point? From an analytical perspective, the answer depends largely on how someone evaluates greatness in MMA. If the focus is on recent performances, it's difficult to argue against Ilia Topuria. His rise has been impressive, his confidence has translated into results, and his ability to perform under pressure has elevated him into conversations that many fighters spend years trying to reach. Those are facts. But veteran fighters often view success through a different lens. For athletes like Gaethje, greatness isn't measured by a single run of momentum. It's measured by longevity, by adaptation, by surviving years of elite competition while continuing to evolve. That perspective doesn't necessarily diminish what Topuria has achieved. It simply places those achievements within a larger timeline. And that's where the disagreement may actually exist. Not over talent, not over skill, but over timing. Some people believe Topuria has already proven everything necessary to justify the praise he receives. Others believe the most difficult tests are still ahead of him. Historically, MMA has seen both scenarios play out. Some fighters arrive and immediately become exactly what the hype predicted. Others discover that remaining on top is far more difficult than reaching it. That's why Gaethje's criticism continues generating discussion, because beneath the headlines and social media reactions lies a legitimate question. Are people evaluating Topuria based on what he has already accomplished, or based on what they believe he will accomplish in the future? And until that question is fully answered inside the cage, the debate surrounding him is unlikely to disappear anytime soon. Looking at the situation as a whole, the story was never really about a single comment. It was about what that comment revealed. When Justin Gaethje publicly challenged the narrative surrounding Ilia Topuria, he tapped into a debate that has been building for quite some time. A debate about hype, a debate about expectations, and a debate about how quickly greatness should be recognized in modern MMA. From an analytical perspective, both sides of the argument have valid points. Topuria has earned enormous respect through his performances. His skill set, confidence, and ability to perform on the biggest stages have made him one of the most talked about fighters in the sport. At the same time, history shows that MMA careers are often defined by what happens after the rise. Once a fighter reaches the top, the challenges become different, opponents adapt, pressure increases, and expectations become harder to satisfy. That reality is what makes veteran perspectives valuable, even when fans disagree with them. As for Gaethje, whether people agree with his comments or not, his willingness to speak openly has ensured that the conversation will continue. And from the UFC's perspective, that attention is valuable because controversy creates interest, interest creates demand, and demand creates fights that fans want to see, which brings the story back to the most important question. What happens next? Will Topuria continue proving critics wrong and strengthen his position even further? Or will future challenges validate some of the concerns being raised now? Only time will answer that, but one thing is already clear. The discussion surrounding Ilia Topuria has moved beyond simple wins and losses. He has become one of the most debated fighters in MMA, and right now, every word, every performance, and every decision is shaping the next chapter of that story.